The results from a default would be absolutely catastrophic, not only for the United States economy, but economies all over the world.
The US president has met congressional leaders about the debt ceiling ahead of the June 1 deadline. Joe Biden.
I'm proud of the progress my administration has made. We've reduced the deficit in the first 2 years by $1.7 trillion.
How much debt do you think American households jumped to from October to December 2022? $16.90 trillion is the largest quarterly increase in 20 years, as mortgage and credit card balances rose amid soaring inflation and rising interest rates. 60% of American people have claimed that the reason for getting into debt is related to financial anxiety. Within the next few months, 43% of Americans are predicted to take on even more debt. However, with the inflation currently at a 40-year high, debt in America will certainly increase. Debt is used to finance the purchase of assets like houses and cars. But when these assets' price rises up, it gets reflected in the loans that get taken out. So as a U.S. citizen, you get this deceptive effect. Are you going to pay off this debt or go and buy the groceries you need like gas or food that keeps you alive? So the real question is, how will this affect the U.S. economy? And why have the American people become so indebted lately? During the COVID pandemic period, Americans had a good chance to save a good amount of money. It increased to 12.6% from 7.25%. The thing that made them pay a record $83 billion in credit card debt in 2020. The government helped people in almost all kinds of debt, on mortgages, on student loans, and so on. So all this support led to a good historical period. But later on, debt started to rise again. Housing debt makes up the majority of American debt, accounting for 72.5% of the total sum. According to half of Americans, the availability of affordable housing was a total issue. There were no houses to go around. Some were driven solely by supply-side constraints. Not only that, but also, you must have a 700-plus credit score to qualify for a mortgage, which means that people whose credit scores weren't in such a strong position were competing to lend dollars that weren't available and for homes that weren't available as well. So the prices were going up like a rocket. On the other side, college education was going up as well. Student debt got a lot of attention because the extremely late rate, which is more than 90 days after the due date, rose to be the highest type of debt that Equifax tracked. So the majority of Americans who pay student loans were paying only interest, which means that the amount accumulates over time. And that's the real issue. On the other side, inflation leads to an increase in the costs of goods and services, leaving many Americans with the perception that their wages are failing to keep pace with rising prices. Last year witnessed an inflation rise of 8.5%, whereas the real hourly earnings for all American employees experienced a 3% decline during the same period. But there is also what is called good debt that can build up individuals' wealth over time, such as business loans, mortgages, or student loans. Taking some measure of consumer debt is absolutely essential in the economy. But in order to save and keep the economy growing, things must be bought. If people do not buy things, companies will watch their inventories build up, and then production will be cut off and workers laid off. Historically, rising household debt has been associated with lower GDP growth and also with recessions, because people are taking on more debt in order to keep the economy growing. Their debt-to-income ratio is increasing, which makes it harder for them to pay off their debt. And if they are unable to pay off that debt, they may eventually reach a point when they must make cuts because no one will lend them any more money. The real issue is middle-class families that built up debt because they thought they would stay in that situation. Something unexpected occurs in the economy. People then lose their jobs, but they are still liable for paying for their car, their house, and their college loans. It is almost impossible to finance it. There is no need to panic or fear about household debt situation now, despite its record level. But it's okay to be concerned about it. It is important for policy and financial leaders to pay attention to when and where we start seeing greater challenges. Government officials need to take action to ensure that Americans are assisted in reducing their debt so they may spend and save properly, attain their long-term objectives of house ownership or wealth accumulation, and be able to invest.